Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I welcome Lynne Salomon Miceli in EDGAR Cases ARE of NYC. Greetings, Lynne. How are you?
Good. Greetings, Hercules. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'll be here
And
from.
great. And tonight, my guest is going to be Gregg Unterberger. Gregg is a former adjunct faculty member at Texas State University. He's currently in private practice as a psychotherapist. He's a certified past life regression therapist who trained directly under Dr. Brian Weiss, author of the best-selling Many Lives, Many Masters. Gregg's case studies are featured in Dr. Weiss's newest book called Miracles Happen. With his wife, Colleen van der Zijden, who is a certified life coach and Lilydale registered medium, Gregg co-hosts an international online network that offers a myriad of resources for spiritual seekers called the Soul Empowerment Community. And his book, The Quickening, Leaping Ahead on Your Spiritual Journey, was widely anticipated and rushed to a second printing just 3 months after its initial release. His work is also featured in the award-winning bestseller We Touched Heaven, that Dr. Raymond Moody calls a terrific compendium of adventures of the other side. It's a collection of stories about near-death experiences. Gregg is one of the most popular ARE speakers, ARE being the Association for Research and Enlightenment, the Edgar Cayce organization, and has also been a presenter for a variety of other metaphysical organizations. And for over 25 years, his presentations and retreats all across the country and online and on radio and TV, Gregg has touched the lives of millions. His website is, and we'll say this again at the end, but I'll say it now. It's greggunterberger.com, and that's GreggUnterberger.com. So tonight, we're going to focus on something, a technique that Gregg developed called spiritual activation. So welcome, Gregg. It's really great to talk to you.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lynn.
And you actually grew up with the Edgar Cayce material, right? Your mom led a meditation group in your home for something like 30 years.
Yes, she did. That's so sweet of you to remember. Yep. Yeah, I sort of you wouldn't think about College Station, Texas, which is the heart of Texas A&M University, as exactly being an enlightened hub. And yet, my mom led a meditation group that was based around the Cayce work and A Course in Miracles for 30 years. And of course, I grew up with that work.
And actually, there is a pretty thriving Edgar Cayce ARE community there in Texas, right? Going back to the time that Edgar Cayce actually spent there in Texas.
Yeah, it's true. You wouldn't, again, you wouldn't knee-jerk that Texas would be a hotbed of metaphysical ideas, but so many people, of course, Cayce died in the 40s, but 1940s, but a lot of people, there were people that got readings from Edgar while he was in Texas, searching for oil as part of the Cayce Oil Company. And for a while, we had in Houston, there was a satellite center for the Association for Research and Enlightenment for several years. And lots of groups. Gosh, when I was in college at University of Texas, I led a college Edgar Cayce study group.
That is not what people would expect from Texas, but that is the truth. That's where Cayce spent quite a bit of time and developed a community. So just in case there's anybody out there who doesn't know, I'm always surprised that there are some people, maybe younger people. Edgar Cayce was an American psychic and mystic who was born in 1887, died in 1945, and gave some 14,000 psychic readings on topics ranging from health and healing to reincarnation and inventions, and just covering pretty much almost every topic. So we won't really be talking that much about Cayce, but he's kind of the background or the context for how Gregg and I know each other. So let's talk about the technique that you developed that you call spiritual activation. What is that, Gregg?
Well, I think it's kind of mind-blowing for people to hear about this kind of thing. We think about powerful mystical or spiritual experiences being available to people, but only if you've meditated for decades, or only if you fly to Central America and do ayahuasca or peyote or mushrooms. Um, and those people are special or magical, or you gotta go out of your way to get these things. And everyday people just can't have them. And spiritual activation is a technique that I developed. Gosh, it's been about 20 years ago now. And what it does is it allows ordinary people, without meditative experiences and without the use of any psychoactive substances, to take a specific peak experience that they've had. And what we do, just briefly as a way of explaining it, is fire the neural networks associated with the original experience so that they sort of loop in the brain. And as that happens, people go back in and re-experience the original feelings and emotions that they had when they had a powerful experience, a spiritual experience, a powerful meditation, seeing their child or their grandchild born, um, drug experiences, near-death experiences. They can actually relive them, and there is the potential in spiritual activation for these experiences to even go deeper and become even more profound than the original experience.
So you sort of recreate an experience that you had, but then you can sort of take off from there and go other places.
Yes, exactly. It's exciting because in my book, The Quickening, Leaping Ahead in Your Spiritual Journey, I say, the potential for this, what if we could hotwire our brain to God? Okay. When we meditate, we are training the brain and we are building neural networks in the brain. The famous expression from Canadian psychologist Donald Hebb is the neurons that fire together wire together. And this makes perfect sense when you think about it. When we play guitar, practicing the fingerings over and over and the strumming and the fingerings for the different chords, over and over, we build a powerful neural network in the brain. And then what starts as, oh my gosh, what's the fingering? And then learning it and then practicing it. And then over and over and over, that's a well-established highway of thought, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then when we re-access that, I mean, eventually you get people, I don't know if you've ever seen a world-class concert pianist, but they're just playing it. Or a rock and roll singer that plays the guitar and shreds the guitar and then sings a verse all while playing and doesn't give it a second thought. And what started out as immensely hard becomes second nature. And what spiritual activation has the potential to do is not only to allow people to re-experience original spiritual connection, but to strengthen that so much that that becomes a doorway or an access to divine intelligence.
So can you give us some examples of experiences that people have had this way, how it works for people?
Absolutely. In my book, The Quickening, Leaping Ahead in Your Spiritual Journey, I tell the story of a woman who I call Angela. And Angela had given birth to her son in the 1960s. And she said, just as it was a very an emergency situation. She was convinced that she was in labor. The doctor told her no. She insisted. The doctor put her up in stirrups and started to look around down there, if you will, without getting too graphic. And all of a sudden, blood exploded everywhere, and she passed out. And she said, but it was the oddest thing. Just before that happened, I saw in the distance over the doctor's shoulder what looked to be the foot of a 50-foot angel.
Wow.
So she saw robes, sort of luminescent robes, and the like probably from the knees down or something of this beautiful angel. And she said, Greg, I've always wondered what that was about. Could we go back in? Can you re-stimulate that memory and see where it takes me? And so we use the spiritual activation technique, and she then did she remember? Did it all come back to her? Were we deepening it? Were we accessing, as Edgar Casey would say, a memory written on the skein of time and space? the Akashic records, who's to say? But Angela, in the spiritual activation experience, remembered going into the angel, into the body of the angel, which is this incredible luminescent being, seeing these beautiful orbs of light. And she said, "This is my home. And I remember this place. And this is my real reality or my true reality. And what happens in the material world is secondary to this, in effect." And she had this incredible experience, obviously, just tears just brimming over her eyes as she re-experienced this or remember or deepened the original experience. And she came back feeling like she knew where her home was and she knew where she was going to go when her time came and she let go of the material body, that she would return to this place, maybe not the angel itself, but this place of great peace and great love where she is absolutely surrounded by love. We could formulate lots of different theories about that. Angela, it almost doesn't matter, but it may be that she had a near-death experience that day and had forgotten it, or it had been repressed or somehow lost to consciousness. But she reclaimed it for herself that day and was very glad that she did.
Does sound like a near-death experience. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful story. Can you give some other examples, other people who have had these experiences?
Yes. You may have heard of a woman named by the name of Tricia Barker. She's a fellow Texan in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And Tricia had a near-death experience and wrote about it in a book called Angels in the OR. She's in a horrific car wreck as a student at the University of Texas in her 20s. I can't remember all the details of it, but as I recall, it was like a T-bone kind of situation. Her body was absolutely trashed. And as she arrived at the hospital, she floated out of her body, and she saw all the surgeons working on her and these huge angelic beings behind the angels sending light into the hands of the surgeons who worked on her. Isn't that a beautiful image? And so I said, I talked to Tricia and I said, "I read your book. I was really impressed. Would you like to re-experience that?" And she said, "Absolutely. That was amazing." And so we use a spiritual activation technique, and I usually set aside a couple hours, 2 to 3 hours for a spiritual activation. People catalyze them pretty quickly, 15 to 20 minutes. They will catalyze that state of consciousness and start to re-experience things. But she went deeper. She remembered aspects of the original near-death experience that she did not remember initially and was not a part of her book. She also said she was totally back in touch with how loved and how cherished she was by these beings of light and this divine intelligence that she came in contact with. Literally for an hour and a half, tears were streaming down her face and mine as well to be in the presence of that kind of energy. So, and I work with other people, a few other people who've had near-death experiences, and we recatalyze the state. Now, did she leave her body completely? No. But she touched into that energy and some memories and some aspects of the original experience came back to her, and it strengthened her connection to the near-death experience as well.
So this is something that you lead people through this process, but is this something that people could possibly do on their own?
Yes, this is what's really exciting. Um, I facilitate this experience, but it can be done at home. In fact, in my book, The Quickening Leaping Into Your Spiritual Journey, there's an entire chapter devoted to spiritual activation. And I tell some stories about it, the technology behind it, and actually sort of how to do the home version. Having said that, I won't lie to you. People typically get better experiences when it is facilitated because I can direct them and I can be very nuanced and I'm used to being a container for these kinds of experiences. But there are full instructions in the book to do it. And in fact, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, this last year I did my first certification where I'm, as a 3-day class, I'm teaching people in great detail how to do this experience, how to catalyze it for themselves and others. And, there's so many people out there, Lynn, and I know you've met them, who say, "I want to make a difference or I want to bring light to the world, but I don't know how to do it." And I tell people, You can start by saying please and thank you and smiling and let people in traffic and just being a decent human being. But beyond that, they want to contribute in some way that is magical or special, and this allows people with a 3-day training to help catalyze these powerful, literally life-changing experiences for other people in a 3-day training. And what was exciting for me is when I did this last fall, we had about 6 or 8 students, and would pair them off, and they would take turns catalyzing the experience for each other. And they were all wildly successful. People were having past life memories. They remembered near-death experiences. They remembered transcendent meditations, but turning points in their lives where they had sudden clarity about why they were proceeding in the direction that they were going, and that sense of enlightenment or power that came with it. And they recatalyzed all those. It was really exciting to be in the same room and see other people do this technique. Uh, so the magic is not with me. If you have the appropriate tools, and these aren't expensive, there's not equipment involved or anything like that. This can be done very simply, in very informal setting, with very inexpensive tools.
We started out by saying that typically people get to these high spiritual states by either meditation, years of meditation, or sometimes maybe drug experiences. Um, and that this is a way to catalyze that without the years of meditation or the substances. But when you do those years of meditation, there's not only occasional maybe visionary experiences during meditation, but there's also a change in daily life, that you become different and you handle things differently. And maybe if a crisis happens, you might be more calm, more cool, more able to connect to your higher source during that crisis to get some wisdom to get through it. So what I'm saying is, it's not just a matter of occasional experiences. It's kind of like a daily life thing. So
Yes.
these, when with the spiritual activation, does that have the same effect? Does that also make a change in people's daily lives? Does it? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, and before we go any further, Lynn, I'm so glad that you brought that up. This is not to be seen as a substitute for meditation.
Mhm.
Meditation is an amazing mind training that is so useful, and so powerful. But here's what I would say, and this is part of the thesis of the quickening, which looks at different ways that we can accelerate our spiritual journey. Okay. Um, there's absolutely no question that people have had powerful spiritual awakenings, and they would say that they are life-changing. And one way we can get to those is through daily meditation, and that is the practice of mindfulness is so important and valuable to me and to others. And so I want to stress that this is not a substitute for those. Having said those powerful experiences, people have talked about a quantum leap, where it's not a series of intellectual understandings that are like going up steps, but instead one day you are thinking this way, and then you have this profound spiritual experience that is life-changing for you. And suddenly the knowledge lives in every cell in your body. Carl Jung famously was asked, "Do you believe in God?" And he said, "No, I do not believe in God." He said, "I know there's God because I've experienced him." And so the thesis of The Quickening, my book, is that there are things that we can do to accelerate that journey so that we can have these experiences. And we need to integrate those experiences into our daily life so that they're not just, oh, I had this magical mystery tour where I went into a 50-foot angel. Wow, isn't that interesting? Let's talk about that over margaritas. Okay, I mean, by all means, talk about it over margaritas. But if that's all that happened, we missed the point. You know,
Right.
what we want to do is, how is it that these experiences are important to us? What is life-changing about that? And for this Angela, she became absolutely fearless about death on the other side of this. Death itself, not the suffering that might come along with dying. I'm right with her. But not afraid of what's on the other side, and recognized that she'd had a profound experience that day, and she wasn't out of her mind and could reclaim that for herself. And for Tricia, a deepening of the original experience, a refreshing of her mind that it was really true and that it happened, and a better understanding of it. So, yes, the ideas explained in the book are potentially life-changing. They are not a substitute for daily meditation or qigong or tai chi or yoga, all of which are regular practices which are incredibly useful.
It's good. So let's see. You have you have this online network, the Soul Empowerment Community, that you've mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What is that, and how does it work for people?
Thank you so much for asking. A number of years ago, my wife and I, my wife is a certified Lilydale medium. For those of you that are aware of Lilydale, a spiritual community in Western New York, that has been around for nearly 150 years now, and has always been this little haven of spiritualists, a little village, which is where I live part-time and part-time in Texas. And these people are certified or registered as Lilydale mediums when they pass a series of tests that are done by the elders in the community. And so she's a medium and also a life coach. And she and I were talking several years ago about how there was just this explosion of loneliness. And the Surgeon General several years ago proclaimed a state of emergency that people were, the disconnection and the discord between people had become so great that it literally had health effects. Not just psychologically, but like people were going to die sooner or be more susceptible to illnesses and weakened immune systems, and describe this as an emergency. And so Colleen and I were thinking about that. And we also thought about how many people had said, I just don't have anybody to talk to about my spiritual journey. I have these dreams that come true. I feel like my father is speaking to me from the other side. I saw a light. I had memories of a past life. But I tell my Baptist neighbors and they put me on the prayer chain, and I just don't, I don't know where are my people. And so what Colleen and I wanted to do was to create a community of people, and we felt called to do so. And what we have is an online network of people in the United States and Canada. And twice a month, we get together and we do a workshop or have an event where we present information on all kinds of metaphysical topics. Sometimes I do a past life regression for the entire group online. Sometimes it's meditation. Sometimes there's people that are interested in polishing their mediumship skills. So twice a month, there are these live online events where we all come together and we discuss things and we present things. And also, we do a lot of personal coaching. Obviously, I can't be a therapist to everybody, but as a psychotherapist, I can often offer help. And Colleen has a guide who's very knowledgeable, who she works with, who's on the other side, and she can often channel information that is helpful to people. So, and it also, the membership includes 2 free live events in different places around the country. Niagara Falls, we've done some in the Poconos. So we're doing one in Florida here in about a month. So these are on-site events at different places around the country, and our members come and join us, and the workshop itself or the retreat is free for their members, and they can bring a guest as well. And we also provide other things. We do 4 to 6 week intensives on dreams based on the Edgar Cayce work, of course. For example, I did complete one of those recently. And also, we've got what we call the Vault of Wisdom, which is a curated library of videos and articles and that people can really trust that we vetted and curated for them. And so there are lots of resources. So if people are interested in crystals, they might come to this event. If they're interested in reincarnation or remote viewing, they might come to this event. And we also bring in speakers and interview authors people who've had near-death experiences. We had Patrick Belisle, of course, who used to be with ARE recently, as one of our guest interviews. So we provide all of this together, and it's really exciting to have a community of seekers who are very open and not judgmental. Not everybody's exactly on the same page, but we don't have to be. But we're all exploring together. And it's very exciting, and the community is really supportive and loving of each other. We love to see that. We didn't know, it's like, well, we're going to put this out here. We hope we get the right people. And amazingly, like somebody's sick and everybody will be praying for them and asking how they're doing online, or, somebody has a success or a powerful spiritual experience. It's like, wow, tell us all about that. So it's exciting to come together online and in person with this group.
Did that start during the pandemic by any chance?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, a
yeah.
little bit after. Hmm.
A little, yeah, because there really was kind of an epidemic of loneliness and all the mental health results of just of isolation, and it was worse during the pandemic. But yeah,
It's still going on.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I
Well,
mean,
that's
people, especially for younger people under 30, I think it's something like 60% of people under 30 say they do not have a friend that they could tell a secret to.
oh
It's tragic.
well, it sounds like a wonderful community, a wonderful way of addressing that need. So you actually the last time I talked to you, which was a number of years ago, you were not married. So I know it's been a while, but congratulations on your marriage.
Thank you
You were
so
married
much.
to a medium. And you mentioned that people ask you, what is it like to be married to a medium? So what is it like to be married to a medium?
It's a kick, I got to tell you. I often joke with people, it's like, I married a medium. It sounds like a 50s sitcom, doesn't
It
it?
does.
Well, for starters, Colleen will talk to me sometimes and she'll say, I met the most interesting man today, yada yada blah blah, and he was really this and this and this, and he's really funny, but really hardworking. And I said, no, wait a minute. Is this person in the material world or are they on the other side? She goes, oh, he's on the other side. I brought him through for a client that I was working with. So a lot of times we have to come up with something, to tell whether whether this is a living spirit or a dead spirit, if you will. So that's always fun. It's nice to be married to somebody that is that intuitive, and of course, it is a joy and a blessing for both of us because uh, I think lots of people, just like we talked about in the community, we don't have people we can talk to about spirit contact or powerful meditative experiences. And of course, with Colleen, I can share anything and she can share anything with me. She actually was at ARE headquarters. Lynn, you'll get a kick out of this. Was taking a mediumship course, which she enjoyed, but she said she wasn't getting all that much out of it. And she went to the bookstore and she found my book. And so she read the book and she went, now and she goes, I'd read a lot of books, but I was reading some stuff I hadn't read before. Some information that was new and different. And she actually called me and wanted me to do a workshop in Lilydale. They have an extensive summer program at Lilydale, in Lilydale, New York, where they bring in near-death experiencers and mediums and on all topics spiritual that you can imagine. All throughout the summer, there are classes offered, as well as mediumship services where mediums give message for free to what they call gallery readings, where people come out and sit at Inspiration Stump, for example, out in the middle of this new old growth forest that hasn't been touched for 200 years, where they have been giving messages from a tree stump called Inspiration Stump. And so she wanted me to come speak. And we started talking online, and the rest, as they say, is history. So,
So, you started talking about how she will talk about someone and you won't know whether that person is on this side or the other. And it doesn't seem to make that much difference to her that they're all equally real to her. So that's kind of like an extension of the community, isn't it?
yes,
The community really is not just on this side. Not everybody experiences that, but I think that's the reality, isn't it? That
Yes, well, and Casey talks about that we all have Edgar Casey, the psychic, the famous psychic that you and I are endeared of, says that we all have guardian angels, and that's not just one, but it's many. There are many energies that watch over us. I'm a student of A Course in Miracles as well, and the course talks about, if you knew the forces that go with you on your journey, you wouldn't doubt and you wouldn't be in fear for a moment, implying that there were both angels on this side of the veil and the other side of the veil that look after us and love us. And that's a source of great comfort.
It is. That's very reassuring. So talking about the people on the other side, our friends on the other side, you have worked with a number of cutting edge techniques, and among them are transpersonal breath work and something called induced after death communication. Maybe you could talk about those a little bit. Maybe we start with induced after death communication since we're on that topic.
Since we're talking about spooks, why not? Yeah.
Spooks.
So
Yeah.
a fascinating story. In 1995, there was a therapist by the name of Dr. Alan Botkin. Okay, a good Baptist boy who went to Baylor University in Texas and came from a very traditional Christian background. Had questions and doubts about it, but was doing a kind of therapy called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a therapy that utilizes eye movements, actually back and forth. It sounds very strange, to help people heal trauma. So they focus on a traumatic experience they've had, and apparently shifting the eyes back and forth helps the brain process through the trauma and put it in a long-term memory. So if a Vietnam veteran or a veteran has had a fireworks show and the loud explosions go off and they remind him of mortar shells, and he absolutely panics and freaks out. His conscious mind knows that these are fireworks and he's not in Vietnam or Afghanistan or Iraq. But every cell in his body reacts as though he's going to die. And this kind of processing with EMDR seems to allow to put the memories in a long-term memory where they no longer get that charge, that panic button, fight or flight response. And I use this very successfully for 25 years. It is one of the treatments of choice for the Veterans Administration. So anyone that has PTSD and has been told that it's an impossible situation and it's incurable, that is absolutely wrong. We have treatment approaches and newer cutting edge ones as well. But Dr. Botkin was working with these tough boots on the ground, kind of hard-boiled Vietnam vets in 1995. And he was helping them process traumatic memories around combat and the loss of their comrades. And in a 2-week period, 3 of his clients said they made contact with people who'd crossed over. Well, Alan does not know what to do with this. He goes, are they imagining this? Am I triggering hallucinations in these people? Are they schizophrenic? But he'd done all the workups with them, and they'd be people he'd been working with a while. And he went back through and he looked at the protocols that he was using, doing this eye movement technique, and he determined that it could be repeated. And here's what was incredible, Lynn. Not only did these people were utterly convinced that they had literally made contact with the other side, much of their post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms disappeared after a single induced after death communication session. Can you imagine that? So, and the kinds of things that, of course, people would say is they would have a visionary, an example in this. I can't recommend Dr. Bodkin's book strongly enough. It is called Induced After Death Communication, and it is by Alan Botkin, and that's Botkin, Alan Botkin, Botkin. You'll hear story after miraculous story about these combat veterans that he's treated, and they would have memories of, for example, a gentleman had said, I need the day off to go run some errands in the village. Can you take my shift in the helicopter? And you can probably see where this is going. The helicopter was shot down and his buddy died that took his place. And for literally decades, this person had said, it should have been me that died. I caused that person's death. My number was up. It was my turn to go, not his. And he died for me. And they suffered that incredible survivor's guilt and depression. And what happened is this guy came and said, "No, you're wrong. My number was up. It was time for me to go. I got to go home from Vietnam earlier than you did. I got out of there right away, and you had to serve another 2 years." And that sort of gallows humor that combat veterans use. And it changed his life. And so Alan thought, I got to learn how to repeat this. And he looked at his protocols and discovered that he could repeat this induced what he became known as induced after death communication with other of his clients, and that beyond that he could train other people to do so. Well, I read about this in 2006, and literally the next week I was in a plane going up to train with Alan and became the 15th person in the world trained in this new technique. And I was absolutely astonished by what happened with my clients that were in the middle of grieving or feeling horrible. And we would induce after death communication. And in about 75 to 80% of the cases, they would make contact in an extended 2-hour session with somebody that crossed over. They'd see grandma, or they would talk to their father or their cat that they had to put down. And without to the number, all of them left feeling way better, way less guilt-ridden, way less grief-stricken. It doesn't take away the day-to-day kind of angst that people feel when they pass the birthday of a loved one who's died, or the first Christmas or the first anniversary without them. But the intense feelings of guilt and overwhelming grief seem to vanish in a single induced after-death communication. In Dr. Bodkin's initial study of 83 of his clients, something like 93% of them were absolutely convinced that they had made contact with the other side. Now, is that proof? No, it's not. But it does mean that these experiences are very real for the people that have them, and only 8% of them thought that contact was even possible in the first place. It's absolutely incredible. Now, here's what's really exciting. Several years ago, they did a study at North Texas State University, and they compared 3 sessions of traditional grief therapy with 3 sessions of induced after-death communication. And they found that IADC, under test conditions with a control group with traditional grief therapy, works far better than regular grief therapy, than just talking about it or reminiscing, or even a therapist being kind and supportive, which of course is always helpful. But IADC was judged as far superior in these tests at North Texas State University. So we're starting to get some research on this work, and it's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. So it seems like that has, it's a lot analogous to spiritual activation, because it's kind of like taking something that sometimes happens. I mean, sometimes people spontaneously get a message, even if they're not a medium, they believe that they get a message from the beyond, but it's sort of being proactive and stimulating it to happen.
Yeah, and I want to point out again, these are people that are not longtime meditators, or these combat veterans were not massage therapists in Ojai, California, who meditated with crystals daily. They were like, I don't even think this is going to happen, but I'll give it a shot, Alan. If you say my friends, that this help was helpful to some of my friends, I'll give it a shot. And so believing in the afterlife or believing that this is possible is not a requirement for people to have this experience. Obviously, they have to invest the time and money to do it. They have to be open to it enough to try it, but they don't have to have any background in spiritual experience and then or training as a medium. This happens organically. Does not happen every time. About in the civilian population, the numbers are more like 75%, and there were something like 95% of the combat veterans that Dr. Bodkin originally treated. So in the civilian population, it's not as common that people make contact. Having said that, the underlying therapy, induced after death communication, the EMDR aspects of it are so effective that people get relief anyway. Even if they don't make contact, they feel better on the other side of the experience because it desensitizes some of that incredible loss and pain that people experience. So it's a really exciting form to work in. Again, there's a whole chapter in my book about this. I mean, one of the most profound experiences was I had I had a woman whose husband was riding in the front seat of a pickup truck with her, and something whistled through the windshield and went right through his head, and just instantly dead. And it had been 7 years since it happened. And when we first started the induced after death communication, when the memory came, she was literally rocking and shaking and weeping. Like, I mean, just because the memory was so triggering for her. Okay. And I asked her, as I always do, how painful is this for you right now in this moment as you remember this memory on a scale of 0 to 10? And she said, 10, but only because I can't go to 15 or 342, you know. And at the end of the session, she had made contact with her husband, and he he'd come to her, and she'd remarried, and she leaned forward and said, "Yep, he likes my new husband." And I said, "Why are we whispering?" It was almost like she was afraid he'd hear, but he'd approved of it. And she said her final image in that session, that 3 hour induced after death communication, was um, she was with him and he was hugging her, and the kids were all around her. And he's saying, "I'm okay. I watch over you. I watch over the kids. You picked a great man to be the father of my children now, and all is well." And at the end of the session, I said, "Where are you at, 0 to 10?" She said, 0. I said, "You're not going to believe this, Greg, but I'm at a 0. It doesn't bother me at all anymore." It was a horrible memory, but that was back then. And right now I can think about it, and it doesn't bother me at all. Wow. Wow. Was that ever proof that this worked for me?
That's pretty amazing. Yeah. And the transpersonal breath work. Tell us about that.
Welcome to my world. Well, little pedigree on this. In the 60s and 70s, there is a famous psychiatrist named Dr. Stanislav Grof, Grof, and Grof did extensive work with psychedelics and hallucinogens and mind-altering substances, plant medicines, if you will, in rigorous clinical testing. Okay, not just dropping acid and getting in the hot tub and drinking tequila shots with members of the opposite sex. Okay, but in clinical settings, and he would give them hallucinogens. And I'm sorry, he would give them the medicines. They would have the experience, and he'd often play music. And as they came out of the other side of it, he would take these visions and integrate them, which is exactly what you and I were talking about. It's not enough just to have the experience, but we need to integrate it in so that it makes sense and is life-changing for people. So he did this, and in the mid 70s, the government pulled the plug on all his research, and he was having enormous success. I mean, people that had been murderers recanted had spiritual awakenings and felt horrible about them and decided to change their life. Bipolar disorder, depression, all kinds of things were radically changed when they were used in appropriate settings and with therapeutic intent. And now he didn't have the money, didn't have the money, and didn't have the substances to work with. And so Groff, out of this work, developed a kind of yogic breathing technique, an ancient yogic breathing technique combined with powerful music and a supportive setting to catalyze these states of consciousness, these mystical psychedelic experiences without the use of drugs. My work, transpersonal breathwork, is an iteration on Dr. Groff's work. I trained with Stan and some other breathwork teachers. I was very impressed with their work, but I saw what I thought were some holes in the process or some things that could be jigged with or adjusted, and developed my own iteration of the work, which is called transpersonal breathwork. And this allows people to, in a weekend workshop, to come and spend 3 hours in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, which parallels psychedelic or mystical experiences. In these experiences, people with no experience with meditation often, and there's no drugs or alcohol involved, but just a kind of circular yogic breathing, powerful evocative music, sweeping symphonic scores, shamanic drumming, and it trains the brain into these non-ordinary states of consciousness where people say, "I saw my past lives. I met grandmother who passed 20 years ago. I met Jesus. I had a physical healing. My depression is lifted completely. And I've touched the face of God even. Who knew that you could get there just by breathing?
Really?
And and again, we have new evidence that this just isn't people's imagination, or, well, the woo-woo types, they listen to some music and could dream up anything. But this kind of circular breathing that we do in transpersonal breath work triggers the natural release of the brain of DMT, which is a psychedelic. And there's two different studies that demonstrate that this is true. And so that people are not just imagining these or fantasizing that they're meeting Jesus or something, that something really biochemically is going on in the brain that is triggered by the breathing. And of course, a supportive, loving set and spiritual setting for this work. And I've been doing this work for about 20 years. And again, there's a whole chapter in The Quickening about this, which is, and everything you can imagine, past life memories, meaning Jesus talking to angels, physical healings, the works. It's absolutely fantastic. And again, the goal is not to say don't meditate. The goal is to say these kinds of experiences are ours for the asking. If we know the right techniques and the right approach, we don't have to wait around for 20 years for fairy dust to fall from heaven and we accidentally have one of these profound experiences. We can go, as I put it, knocking on heaven's door. And after all, isn't that what the Master says? Jesus says, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. So it's exciting to think we can go after these experiences. We don't have to wait around for them to come organically or spontaneously. And that's not to take away from any of them if they do.
That is exciting. That is very exciting. So, yeah, I would love to attend one of those breathwork events sometime. So, speaking of events, you do have a number of things coming up in the next several months. Let's talk a little bit about what you have coming up. There's a place called the Santosha Holistic Center in Williamsville, New York. You're going to be doing some things there. Do you want to talk about some of those events coming up?
Sure, I'll just touch on them briefly. On June 6th, I'll be doing Happier Right Now, which it's very interesting. I think most people go, I think we all had this conversation. I'll be happy when. I'll be really happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I get a divorce. I'll be happy when I have children. Oh, I'll be happy when the kids are out of the house, right? I'll be
Yeah,
happy when I have this new job. No, I'll be happy when I get this new car. And you kind of are, but then you're not. And what we do is we put our exterior experiences outside of us and we say, gosh, if we could just get everything in the world just right, I'd be happy. Hey, what are the odds? What are the odds that we're going to get the political situation, the social situation, the cultural situation, our friend group, our spouses, our families, exactly where we want them to be? Probably not great.
not great.
Okay. But we treat happiness like that. It's all about external. Well, obviously, and you know this because you're a Casey student, there's lots of things that we can do. There's ways of thinking about things. There are choices that we can make. There are just some hardcore techniques that can be taught that can bring us a lot of happiness right now. And here's what I want people to know that are going, yeah, you're probably talking about positive thinking and just denying everything that's bad in your life. But I'm not. I'm really not. These are techniques that can, boost your mood, allow you to feel more positive, allow you to be more in the moment and to be happier right now, regardless of what's going on out there. I'm not saying you're not going to be angry or upset about some things or frustrated with things in your life. But the bottom line is we can be a lot happier. And that's not just me saying that, by the way. There's I think it's a 2-decade study that was done in Australia where they said about 40% of someone's happiness is actually within their control and their power. Isn't that amazing?
That is
Okay.
amazing.
Yep. Like 10% of it are, sort of wealth and health, I think. And then about another 40% are life circumstances. But that still puts a lot in your court that you have control and power over. So we'll be talking about that in one-day workshop. Then on June 7th, I'll be doing an introduction to spiritual activation. If people are interested in becoming certified in spiritual activation, they would want to take that intro course first. And then a 3-day course that I am offering at Fellowships of the Spirit just outside of Lilydale, New York. There's the 3-day facilitator certification training. And so then that allows people that are life coaches or therapists, or just people that want to bring more light and more power into the world, that come and train with me. And I teach them the techniques so that they can be totally comfortable doing them, know how to help people not only activate them, excuse me, but as we said, to integrate them into the people's lives so that they're useful and they can live out of these powerful spiritual truths.
So June 6th is at Santosha is Happier Right Now, and June 7th is the Introduction to Spiritual Activation. Are
Right.
they all in person, or is there an online aspect to that?
I think we offer Happier Right Now online as well. I think what do they call it, dual or whatever, hybrid, where we do that I believe it will be online as well as in person. Uh, these listings have not yet been added. I just recently booked them. But you can go to, and I guess this will be listed on your website, the events listing for Santosha Holistic Center and also Fellowships of the Spirit outside of Lilydale.
Okay, so it's santoshaholisticcenter.com, and that's
Mhm.
Santosha. And then the Lilydale, the outside of Lilydale, the Fellowships of the Spirit on July 19th and August 8th, you'll be doing the intro to spiritual activation. And
Yes.
then in October, it's the 3-day facilitator certification. So this is for people who want to learn to do what you do and lead other people through the process, right?
Yeah. If you've ever been curious about, well, and one of the goodies that you get is in the 3-day certification, we pair people off, as I said, and we practice catalyzing the state. And so you yourself as a student will not only learn the technique, but you'll have the technique catalyzed in yourself so that you can regain and re-experience those most powerful and poignant and beautiful spiritual experiences of your life. And hardwire that connection to the divine more strongly.
And then oh, and so if people are interested in that one, it's called the Fellowship of the Spirit, and the website for that is Fellowships, Fellowshipspirit, fellowshipsspirit.org. And
That's
then
correct.
your book. If people really want to um, learn more about all of these things in depth, there are chapters on spiritual activation and breath work and so forth in your book. And tell us again the title of your book.
It's called The Quickening Leaping Ahead on Your Spiritual Journey. And I don't want to miss also that I'm doing 5 different programs at Lilydale Assembly in Lilydale, New York, this summer, including some that are Edgar Casey programs, Lynn.
So tell us just a little bit about those.
Oh gosh, I don't have all the listings. I'm going to be doing a journey through the life between lives where we take the entire group into a non-ordinary state of consciousness through hypnosis, and they remember picking their current lifetime. How many times have we said, if souls pick this lifetime, why did I pick this crazy family? Or why did I pick my ex-wife or my ex-husband? Or why did I pick this particular aspect of my life that's so frustrating? And what I do is we regress people back to the life between lives, the space in between lives. And that's pretty exciting. We're also doing Edgar Casey's Secrets of Happiness. Casey had lots of ideas that many Casey students miss about how to make your life more happier. Um, there's another one called Signs and Signals from Beyond. We get lots of signals from the other side, but we don't know what to look for. And sometimes spirit contact can come, and there's actually research on this, believe it or not, in all kinds of unique and fun ways. And if we know what to look for, we might be able to see, grandma who's crossed over. We might be able to hear from her. So let's see, just all kinds of exciting, some near-death experience research too. I talk about that. So there are actually 5 different programs that I'll be offering this summer at Lilydale, and you will want to go to Lilydale Assembly, I believe it's .org. And you can find the entire Lilydale program. There's stuff going on there every day, mediumship demonstrations every single day during the summer. And it's just a beautiful place to be. We're on Lake Casadega, and the old growth forest is in our backyard. It's over 200 years old and untouched by anybody. Just an amazing place.
And you said you live now part-time at Lilydale, part-time in Texas and part-time in Lilydale. That's an
Yes, ma'am.
interesting, nice balance there. Two very different worlds. So, if people want to reach you, for either to see you in your private practice or to arrange to do a program with you or find out more about other things that you're doing, how can people reach you?
They can always go to greggunterberger.com. That website is under construction. We're doing some tweaks on it, and it's taken longer than I thought, but we'll get it together. And that is Gregg. That's Greg with two G's at the end. And then it's Unterberger, UNT as in Tom, ER, B as in boy, ER, and G as in Greg, ER. So my name, greggunterberger.com. I told my mom years ago, I said, I finally got my own website. It's called, the name is cleverly greggunterberger.com. I came up with it all by myself. And she looked at me and she said, no, you didn't. She gets credit. She named me. So I'd love to hear from people. Happy to answer any questions, direct you towards my book, The Quickening, Leaping Ahead on Your Journey, on Your Spiritual Journey, which is available on Amazon. 4.5 stars so far, anyway. Somebody likes it out there. And of course, upcoming programs. I'll also, and Lynn, just for your audience, if people want to contact me directly, 512-663-4155. They can leave me a message or text me at that number, 512-663-4155. To contact me directly, be happy to answer any questions they have about any of this or to potentially book a session.
Very nice. And if anybody out there wants to reach me, they can contact me through the ARE of New York at info@edgarcaycenyc.org. And I'll spell that. It's info at edgarcaycenyc.org. So Casey isn't spelled exactly the way a lot of people expect it to be. So thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been really fun seeing you and talking to you. And I hope we can do it again another time.
It's a pleasure. I would look forward to that.
And thank you, Hercules, for the opportunity.
And thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Greg, for an amazing and informative and very information-filled show. And I'd love to have you back on, Greg.
Very good. Love to come back.
Okay,
Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Joyous journeys and amazing adventures. And may the new year continue to treat you well.
You too.